So our next gonna be Clive. He is the lawyer for Dr. Aafia Siddiqui. He gonna tell us what happened to Aafia, what can we do for her, why she's incarcerated, and what as a community we can come inshallah collectively to do for her. Mr. Clive, please.
Sure, can we? Yeah. For slightly taller people. Yeah, that's good, that's good, that's good. Fowzia said she didn't think she was as short as she thought, but she is. We have to raise this up quite a bit for me. Look, I want to begin by saying thank you to all of you for being here, because, oh, sorry, that's all right. No, I will stop. Thank you very much for being here. This is great to see so many people here for Aafia. I visited Aafia today with a legal visit for 4 hours, and this poor woman is the most abused person. I've now represented almost 150 people who are victims of the American war of terror, and those have included 87 of the prisoners in Guantanamo. And as an American, I never thought I'd say this, but I never thought I would go down to a place like Guantanamo and talk to people about how our government tortured them in unspeakable ways. And one of the people I represented was Binyam Mohammed, who was a British guy, who had been taken by the US government to Morocco, where we had the Moroccans take a razor blade to his genitals every 2 weeks for a year and a half, just because we thought somehow that was a good thing to do to prove how civilized and wonderful we are. And the only reason I tell you that is because actually Aafia has been through far, far worse. And I know a lot of you know the story already, but I'm going to tell you the story because, you know, it's very hard to believe quite how bad we have been. I've been to Afghanistan 4 times on Aafia's case to get the proof that what the CIA says is a lie. And let's start at the beginning. And the beginning is why people think, and somewhere deep in them, they think, oh, you know, Aafia was arrested by the government for terrorism. She must have done something wrong. How many people think, honestly, at some point, they've thought that? I'm glad you don't, but I bet most of you are lying. I bet that most people did think that maybe she did something wrong. And one of the interesting things in trying to dig into all of this is to work out just how the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, and I use that word intelligence very loosely because they're really, really stupid, how it is that they come to think that Aafia was a terrorist. And you know what? We've got this is not going to work. It keeps collapsing. Don't worry, I'll just lean in. We've got an intelligence agent who we've interviewed here in America who told us why they thought Aafia was a terrorist, and it's just astoundingly stupid. They thought that Aafia had a PhD from MIT, right? Is that true or false? No, it's not true. It's false. She didn't have a PhD from MIT. She had a PhD from Brandeis. And they thought because it was MIT that it had to be in physics because it's the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and that's all they do. And is that true or false? No, it's total nonsense. So then they thought because she had this PhD from MIT, she must be able to make a nuclear bomb. How many people here think they can make a nuclear bomb? Who's studied physics? I did. Yeah, look at you. You look like a terrorist. You've got to grow a better beard, though. Look, they thought that this young woman who had actually got her degree in education could build a nuclear bomb. Now, the next step is even stupider. They thought that she was going to be smuggled into the US by Al-Qaeda, that she was a top member of Al-Qaeda. I think the CIA really doesn't like this bit, you know. They thought that Al-Qaeda was going to smuggle her in. Now, how many women were in the top echelons of Al-Qaeda? How many? None, right? Because they are a teeny-weeny bit chauvinist, in my view. So that wasn't true, but they were going to smuggle her in. And you know who they thought was going to smuggle her in here? You're never going to guess this. They thought it was going to be the Medellin drug cartel. Where do they get this stuff from? I really have no idea. It's absolutely fantastic. Can I use that mic? This one's really booming.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. While they are arranging mic, brothers and sisters at the back, can we stop making noise? The chairs and the other kinds of distraction? Please, please. Jazakumullahu khairan. Thanks a lot.
I'm not sure is this working? Yeah, we'll use this one, all right. Yeah, if you know, I'm afraid the one thing the Americans have taught us all is how to torture people. So if you make a noise back there, I'm afraid the imam here is going to come for you. Look, so this is where they thought that Aafia was some sort of terrorist. And so then what they did was they were torturing Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Now, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is still in Guantanamo. He's one of only 15 people left there. We have proved that 765 of the prisoners in Guantanamo were innocent, that we picked up the wrong people. And the reason America picked up so many innocent people is we paid massive bounties to the Pakistanis. Now look to the person on your right. I'm going to offer you $250,000, sir, if you tell me that Mohammed on your right was in Tora Bora in 2001. Are you going to take my $250,000? Yeah, you are, aren't you? Yeah, he's nodding his head. This is a 6-year-old child next to him. This man here is going to take $250,000. That's what happened in Pakistan. In all seriousness, we, the Americans, were offering all this money, and people had turned their own granny in for $250,000. And so that happened to almost half of the Guantanamo Bay people. But it happened to Aafia, because we had tortured Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and he had been waterboarded 83 times. And in the middle of that, on March the 18th, 2003, which was right in the middle of his waterboarding, the CIA showed him a picture of Aafia and said, "Tell us what you know about her." Now, what he did was he didn't think that anyone would believe that a woman was a big member of Al-Qaeda, so he told them all sorts of nonsense. That was March the 18th. March the 30th was when Aafia and her 3 children were abducted. Now, I need my volunteers here because this is really important. Mohammed, can you come up, please, young boy? Who are my other volunteers? Mohammed, you just stand there. That's okay. Mohammed is being very kind in being my volunteer because I want you to visualize what really happened to Aafia and her children. And we've got some volunteers here, and I'm very grateful. What's your name, little girl? Imara. Imara, right now you're Mariam. So Aafia, she told me this just today. I should never have taken the shortcut to the airport in Karachi. On March the 30th, 2003, Aafia was going to go up to Islamabad from Karachi. She took a car and they were going to the airport and they were going to fly up to Islamabad, but they were stopped on the way by the ISI, the Pakistan intelligence. And in the car with Aafia, her 6-year-old son Ahmed, who's being played by Mohammed right here, her 3-year-old daughter, who is Mariam, and her 6-month-old baby. And I just want you to imagine this. I want you to see this, because this is what sets Aafia's case apart from everything else that I've seen for the last 22 years of dreadful American misconduct. The first thing they do is they drag Aafia and the kids out of the car. Apparently, they've never had the decency to admit what they did, but apparently, with the 6-month infant, they drop Suleiman on his head and kill him. Can you imagine that? You're parents, right? And you imagine that you're not sure whether that happened or not. That happened to this little child. The second thing they did with Mariam is they took little Mariam, who was a US citizen, like so many of you. The CIA took Mariam up to Kabul, to a war zone, where they forcibly adopted this 3-year-old little girl into a white Christian American family on the obvious principle that it's better to be a white Christian American than a Pakistani Muslim of color. Who on earth thought of that? And they renamed the little girl Fatima and put her in a family where she was for 7 years. She would still be there to this day if it wasn't for Fowzia. So that was Mariam. Then the third child, which is you, mate, Mohammed, well done. Your Ahmed was 6 years old, US citizen. Are you an American citizen? You are. You're an American citizen, right? Yeah, you are. All right. And they took Ahmed all the way up to Kabul and put him in prison at age 6. They put this child in prison at age 6. An American child, the CIA took him up there and put him in prison. What madness is this, right? Now, you can go sit back down. You're free to go. I'm not going to hold you for 5 years like they did. Thank you very much, kids. I just want you to think about it in looking at those real children, because that's what happened to Aafia's real children. And what impact is that going to have on you? Is there anything you're going to refuse to say if they do that to your children? And they took Aafia to Bagram Air Force Base. And in Bagram, they tortured her for 5 years. I've been to Bagram, and I went there. You know, I have the advantage in Afghanistan that I represented most of the current government when they were in Guantanamo. So they're incredibly helpful to me. And back when I used to go to Afghanistan when the Americans were in power, it was a nightmare. But now it's just a much, much safer place. And so I've been there. They let me go to Bagram. I took some of the people who saw Aafia in Bagram, and they heard her screaming in Bagram. And in Bagram, she was shown children who the American government said were her children, and they were abusing these children in front of Aafia. And I talked to Aafia about that. I mean, can you imagine that happening to you as a parent? I'm a parent, and they can do what they want to me. I don't really care. I've had a good life. But if they did that to my son, I don't know what it would do to me, right? And I can see it would do the same to you. And Aafia told me, she's a very brilliant woman, and she said when she was going through having her children, she thought, tortured in front of her, she had a choice to make. How do I stop this? What would you do to stop this happening to your children? She had to pretend she didn't care. She thought the only way she could get these barbarians to stop doing what they were doing was to pretend she didn't care. I mean, how could you, as a parent, how can you even think of that sort of situation? And Aafia was there for 5 years, and they tortured her for 5 years, and they had her do all sorts of silly things. And I've seen a bunch of what they did. How many people here, you physicists, okay, here we go. How do you shoot down a satellite? Did they teach you nothing in school? Did they not teach you how to shoot down a satellite? Are you totally ignorant? This is madness. They'd had Aafia write out that she could shoot down a satellite. And this was part of what was introduced against her in this bogus trial up in New York. And I got this not long ago, and I thought, where did this come from? So you look at it closely, and it comes from a Discover magazine that was published only in paper in December 2007. And if you look at what she wrote about how to shoot down these satellites, it's written on the face of someone in an article about how to cure aging. But if you turn the page over, I ordered the Real magazine. I just thought, let's take a look at where this came from. And I got the Real magazine, and on the page before is this stupid article about how to shoot down satellites. They'd simply had her write out what was on the page before. But the key thing about that document is it was only published in America in paper. You couldn't get it if you were a Pakistani in Pakistan or an Afghan in Afghanistan. So there's only one person who could have brought it to Afghanistan. And who was that? The CIA agent. That's the only person who could have done it. And they had Aafia write all this total nonsense up to try to force her to make it look like she was a terrorist. Absolute nonsense. And she told me that's what happened, and now we can prove it's true. But the US government finally worked out that she was not a terrorist and they'd made a mistake. Did they apologize? What do you reckon? Who thinks the Americans apologized? No. Did they say, oh, I'm really sorry we tortured you and your children, you can all go home now? Well, actually, yes, they did. They didn't say sorry, but they said, if you go to Ghazni, which is a place in about 150k southwest of Kabul, you can have your son go there and you can pick your daughter Mariam up there, and then you can go back to Pakistan and live happily ever after. Were they telling the truth? What do you reckon? No, of course not. It was all nonsense. This was the problem. In 2008, after 5 years of torture, Aafia was already possibly the most famous woman in Pakistan. And that was thanks to the incredible work that Fowzia had done. Now, we're going to get to a lot more clapping for Fowzia. All right, I say this all the time, and I'll say it again. If you're ever in trouble, will you please have this woman as your sister, because she is the best sister in the world. And let's have another little round of applause for Fowzia. So Fowzia and her mum had done some tremendous work to make Aafia famous. Unfortunately, the downside of that was that the people who had originally sold her sister to the American CIA was Pervez Musharraf, and he was still in power. He was clinging to power in July 2008, and the last thing that they wanted was this woman to come back, Aafia, to come back and tell the world what happened to her and her children. So the ISI concocted a way to dispose her. They call it a disposal operation, where you have someone you want to get rid of and you kill them. It's called assassination in my world, or murder. So they had planned to send Aafia with her son, who had been in prison for 5 years and who had been told his name was Ihsan Ali, not Ahmed, and if he ever said he was Ahmed, they'd kill him. And they put him on a bus to go to Ghazni. And on that bus was a Pakistani ISI agent, and I've got a picture of him. And on the bus, they go there. Now, they don't even figure out their mother and son, because poor Aafia is so traumatized by what she's been through, and she's in a full chador. And poor old Ahmed is so terrified by what he's been through that he doesn't say, I'm your son. But they ride together down to Ghazni, and they're told to sit outside the Khalid bin Walid Mosque in Ghazni. Now, I've been there 3 times. I went there in February of last year for the first time. It was the coldest. I paid $4 to stay in the worst hotel I've ever been in. It was incredibly cold, but you know what we do for our clients. Anyway, I went to the Khalid bin Walid Mosque, and Aafia sat outside that in the middle of summer in July 2008. She sat there for 7 hours waiting for her daughter to be delivered to her. Now, her son was dressed in an overcoat with 4 big pockets, and the pockets were full of fruit. Why was that? Why would the ISI have dressed Ahmed up in a big coat in the middle of summer with 4 big pockets of fruit? What do you think? He's meant to look like a suicide bomber, right? And she's in a chador, so no one can see what's under her chador. 2 days ahead of this, and we've got the documentation of this now, 2 days ahead of this, someone, a woman who was obviously in the pay of the ISI, had called in a suicide bomber tip, saying there's going to be this woman 2 days from now who's going to be sitting outside the mosque. And they called it in to the Afghan National Police. So Aafia is sitting there for hours and hours, and people go up and try to talk to her. She can't talk to them. She speaks Urdu. They speak Farsi. But then finally, after 6 hours of this, this chap called Mohammed Ajmal Mohammadi, who's one of my favorite people in Afghanistan. He was a tailor, and he worked right across the street from the mosque. And he spoke Urdu because he had done some tailoring in Pakistan. So he goes out, and he goes up to, it's getting dark, it's now about 7 o'clock on July the 17th, 2008. And he says, it's dangerous, this is a war zone, you can't stay out here, you got to go stay with my mom, she's just round the corner. As they're having that conversation, the Afghan National Police show up with their AK-47s, and there are 40 of them. And they ring Aafia and Ahmed and, thankfully, Mohammadi, and they're going to shoot the mother and son. They were never going to deliver the daughter. They were just going to kill them. And what was going to happen is they were going to shoot them, and then the ISI could have said, we told you all along she was an evil terrorist. She was so evil that she was going to have her own son blow up outside a mosque. And then they were going to plant a whole bunch of evidence on her to make it look like a terrorist, and that was going to be the last anyone would ever hear of Aafia Siddiqui. The only reason that didn't happen was because Mohammadi stood in front of her and wouldn't let them shoot her. And they came running up from behind and ripped off her chador and discovered she's not a suicide bomber. Mohammadi saved Aafia's life. Whether he did her a favor or not is an open question after all the abuse she's gone through since. But he saved her life. And she's taken to the Afghan National Police headquarters. And they established she's actually done nothing wrong under Afghan law. The only crime she's committed is she's in Afghanistan without a proper visa. And that's because she was kidnapped by the CIA. It's hardly her fault. So they have no problem with her. They're going to let her go. But then the US military hears that she's been captured and not killed, so they come swooping into Ghazni, and on the 18th of July, they then come into the Afghan National Police headquarters and demand to see Aafia. Now, to their credit, initially the Afghans refused to let them do it. But then, we do what we do best, and the Americans bribed the head of police. And they were then allowed to go to interrogate Aafia to see what's going on. So Aafia's in a room which is really quite small. It's about a third of the distance from here to the wall, quite a small room. And she's behind a curtain. And this is her version of events, and it turns out this is the total truth. She's behind a curtain on a bed, and she hears American voices coming into the room, and she thinks, oh my goodness, I'm going to get tortured some more. So she peeks out from behind the curtain, and one of the American soldiers sees her and shouts, she's on the loose, and shoots her twice in the stomach. And then they discover that they've just shot an unarmed woman, so they make up this total nonsense about how she reached for an M4 machine gun. Can I ask you, Mohammed, where's the safety catch on an M4 machine gun, do you know? Is there anyone in this room who knows where the safety catch is on an M4? You do? Oh, yeah, you're probably the one behind this, mate. So there's two people in this room who know. Not a lot of the women, I noticed, know. She's meant to pick up this M4 machine gun, flip off the safety catch, and start shooting at the American soldiers. And the great thing about lying is you often get caught out when you lie. And the American soldiers point to two holes in the wall that are conveniently in the wall in that room and say, that's where the two bullets went that she fired at us and she nearly killed us. Well, we have more recently got a video that was taken earlier that day in the same room that shows those two holes in the wall already. The two holes were actually for hanging pictures. There's no bullet in them. There was no shell casing. There were no bullets from an M4 rifle. There was no gunshot residue on Aafia. There's no gunshot residue anywhere. None of her fingerprints. The only bullets and shell casings are from the 9mm gun they used to shoot her. So she is now a victim of an attempted murder herself. But instead, they charge her with attempted murder of federal officers. They take her to Bagram, patch her up. She almost dies. And then they took her all the way to New York and put her on trial for attempted murder of two officials. Now, you've got to think, this is Afghanistan. There are 100,000 people actually killed in Afghanistan. And yet the one person that they try for something, thousands of miles away from where it all happened, was Aafia Siddiqui, who didn't shoot anyone and was shot herself. And at the very worst, if she'd been guilty, she'd expect 10 years for that. They give her 86 years. And the reason she gets convicted is there are no witnesses for her. Because the only witnesses at her trial are the people the American military brought. And they didn't bring any for her. Now, I've been there, and I've investigated. I've been there 4 times, and I've got all the witnesses now. But she didn't have any back then. So she's convicted. She's sentenced to 86 years. It's basically the death penalty. And longer than anyone in Guantanamo Bay, any of the guys who really apparently did the 9/11, Plan 9/11 and all that stuff. She's got more time in prison than any of those people will ever serve. And she's then taken to FMC Carswell. And you know, I have many regrets about Aafia's case. I wish I'd been there to do the trial. She wouldn't be there today. I wish when Fowzia was first trying to get me to take the case some years ago that I'd been able to do it, because we'd have finished this by now. But, you know, the ultimate thing was that Fowzia persuaded me to go and see Aafia because I was going to be in Texas on a death penalty case. And, you know, I could hardly say no. So I went to see her, it was now 2 years ago, and I went to see her in FMC Carswell. And I've been to every death row in America pretty much. I've been to Guantanamo 42 times. FMC Carswell is worse than any prison I've ever been to. And Aafia told me that she had been raped twice in FMC Carswell, that she's sexually assaulted on numerous occasions. I wasn't quite sure whether to believe it when I first heard it, but then you look into that place, and there have been 12 employees of that prison convicted of rape, including a Christian minister in that prison. They have the highest sexual assault rate of any prison in America, and it's in your backyard. And honestly, these people have pissed me off so much. We've sued them now, and we're going to shut that place down, because it's not just, I mean, it's Aafia who provokes all of this. But there are 974 other women in that prison, and they're all going through the same stuff. Now, no one's going through what Aafia is, because she's been held in administrative segregation, admin seg, for the entire time she's been there. She's been there effectively 16 years now. There is no other woman in the 10,250 women in federal prison who's been in admin seg that long. Not even Lisa Montgomery, who was on death row. No other woman in America has been treated as badly as Aafia. And the reason for this is they seriously still think she's a terrorist, and they seriously don't believe that the CIA took her children. I got all the records from FMC Carswell, and they're so heartrending that you read in there that they note that she saved her dinner, her turkey dinner, because she hoped she could give it to her son, who she knew was being tortured by the Americans. There's all this stuff in the medical records, and they just don't believe it. They think she's just a bit obstreperous, as opposed to someone who's suffered more than any other person I've ever met. This is what we're talking about here. Right, now let's get down to what we're doing about it. So we got until Monday at noon to get Biden to give clemency. Is he going to do it? I don't know. I spent 10 days in Washington in December, going around all the senators and congressmen and people, and Fowzia and I were just there for 4 more days this week. He knows about it. He's pardoned his own son, Hunter. He's given commutation to 37 people on death row. He's let, let's face it, I'm glad he's let 15 more of my Guantanamo clients out. He finally got rid of my last of 87 people, finally went home last week. That's great. But on the other hand, he hasn't given clemency yet to Aafia, and he's only got till Monday to do it. And I hope to goodness he's going to do it. And whatever you can do in the meantime, I'll give you the telephone number of the guy in the White House, and you can just call him all weekend. But we got to hope and pray. You got to do all your praying as well between now and Monday that she gets clemency. And if she does, we get her out of this country. We take her to another country, which we got all arranged, where she can get health care and proper treatment and get mended. You know, she's missing all her one level of teeth because they knocked it out when they punched her in Afghanistan. She's deaf in one ear because they beat her so much. She's got all sorts of things going on, poor woman. And yet she's still there, and she's still showing courage. So I hope we get her out on Monday. But if that doesn't happen, are we going to stop? No. No, we're certainly not going to. And there's a whole series of other things we're going to do. So next on the list is to swap her for Shakil Afridi with Pakistan. I have a cunning plan to swap her for Imran Khan. Actually, I won't go into it in detail, but I've known Imran for many years. He's a good friend of mine. I don't care if anyone disagrees with me. He's a decent person. And I'd like to swap her for him, and then we can have him in America, and we'll sort Pakistan out, which would be good. We need to get the military out of politics in Pakistan. But failing that, then we got lots of other things. The Afghan government wants her there, and we got a chance of doing a swap there. Or we go up, and not or, but we file in New York for compassionate release, where we have a fabulous case. I've already written it up. It's 76,000 words. All the evidence that we've now got that proves they were wrong about what they did, all the facts they had were wrong. We can prove the CIA was lying, and so on and so forth. So what are you going to do? There are many things you can do, right? This mosque has been supportive in the past, in some ways, of Donald Trump. I'm going to be the first person to tell you I didn't vote for Donald Trump, and there's no chance I'm ever going to vote for Donald Trump. But we can get him to do the right thing, and we need the influence of your members who have been supportive of him to make sure that we get that right. We need your help on that. We need your help with Democratic Congress people, because I want to have a hearing about the truth of what happened to Aafia, because what does the CIA think they were doing? I mean, set aside the fact they've tortured dozens of my clients over the last 20 years. What were they doing taking 2 little American children to a war zone, and what they did to Mariam and to Ahmed? And are they ever going to tell this poor family that they really did murder the youngest child? Are they ever going to admit that? Because you as a parent would want to know, right? You would want to know what really happened to your child, and it's disgusting that the American government won't admit that. So we need your help to petition with some of the Congress people to have hearings in Congress about just what they thought they were doing, the CIA. Because you know what? If Congress issues a subpoena to the head of the CIA to come and tell the truth, Aafia will be going home on the next plane, because these liars will never, ever come forward and tell the truth. That's how we got everyone out of Guantanamo. So we need your help on that. We need your help on other things. Who here thinks you can't do anything to help Aafia? Put your hand up. All right. What's your name? What do you do? Ahmad, did you? Sorry? Truck driver. Okay. All right. Well, you can do all sorts of things, right? We can do some imaginative things with trucks. You can organize a thing where you drive your trucks up to Washington and you go round and round the White House for days, right? That'd be great. That'll get on every TV station in the world, and I'll get you out of jail when they try and do that to you, right? So it'll be all right. It'll be a badge of honor. Who else? Yeah, we're going to have lots of questions at the end. Do you mind holding it till then? But you can tell me if you think you can't do anything, because there is no one in this room who can do nothing. I'll tell you some of the things I want. Who's into IT? Yeah, okay. You people have all got to come up and talk to me. I want to create a video game, and the video game is called Aafia Siddiqui. And to win the game, you have to do all the evil things that the CIA did. This is the sort of game my son would love to play, right? Because he loves these antisocial things. And so you create a video game where you have to be the CIA agent, And it'll be totally viral, and then everyone will know about Aafia Siddiqui, and the CIA will be really pissed off at us, and I'll be very happy. So you're going to do that for me, right? You organize it. You just get your friends to do it. I just want you to swear in blood that you're going to do that for me. Now, what else are you going to do? There's so many things you can do. One thing that we have for Aafia is we have email you can send. It's letters for Aafia. That's the word letters, and then the number 4, and then Aafia, AAFIA, @gmail.com. You can send me letters at that to Aafia. Don't be all pitiable about her. She doesn't want pity. You got to tell her how she inspired you. I talked to her today about how she didn't choose this nightmare that she's gone through, she didn't choose. But the US government has given her the opportunity to do an enormous amount of good in the world, right? Because they've made her the most famous person in Pakistan. We're going to make her the most famous person in America by the time we're through, right? So, what we want to do is for you to write letters of encouragement to her that you send to me, that I then send in under legal mail so they can't stop it, that tells her how she's inspired you and how she's inspired other children in your school or whatever it is. Because that's really important to her. This is about the dignity of Aafia Siddiqui, and we need to remember that all the time. But there's unlimited other things you can do. If you're into, we need to tell a story more, you need to make... like Zaina El-Debs, who is this fabulous woman in Britain, never made a film in her life, has made a film about Aafia, that she shot the whole thing, and she got some people in Lebanon to turn it into a film. So if any of you think you can't make a film, now's your chance to do it. And we need to make her now. Up till now, we haven't tried to make her very famous because, frankly, it was quite good for her to be unknown by the middle America because then Biden can do it and no one notices. But from now on, the gloves are off. If he doesn't do the right thing by Monday, we want to make her the most famous woman in the world. And we need your help to do that. So there's just unlimited things you can do. You've now heard from me for far too long, frankly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Fowzia to come up. And look, I just want to say this about Fowzia. First, she's going to see her sister tomorrow. And this is incredibly difficult because can you imagine having your sister in FMC Carswell? It is a horrible place. Aafia is lovely. I had the most lovely conversation with her today, but she's deeply traumatized. She has been through worse trauma than any of you can imagine. And obviously that has a massive impact on this, what was young woman who was a brilliant scholar, who was Fowzia's little sister. And so to see her in that awful place is just incredibly traumatic. So I hope you'll bear that in mind as Fowzia has to get up there and do what she does. She's really good at it. But at the same time, I want you to think this. Is there anyone in the world who could have done more for her sister than Fowzia? I have immense respect for this woman here. And I want you to give her a big round of applause now.
A little higher. Can I go higher? Is it going to stay like this? That's fine. Everyone can hear me? Assalamu alaikum, everybody, brothers and sisters. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here this late at night. On a Friday night, I'm sure there are a lot of things you had that you would want to... Should I just take it in my hand? Okay. So I want to thank you all for being here and for sparing this time and for wanting to know and for wanting to hear about Aafia. And you've heard her story. And this whole story, of what I knew kind of corroborated Clive's 4 visits to Afghanistan and one in the freezing cold with no heating or anything, but his dedication, for which we'll always be grateful, got all the information. It's kind of interesting because what I had known was very, very similar, but there was just one person, one witness, whose picture we also have, and who apparently was from the ISI. But anyway, so he was this person who actually was taking Aafia to Ghazni and actually got Ahmed to join her. And that was all I had known. But it was interesting what he had told me, the conversation that he had with Aafia at that time, coming out of Bagram and being loaded, I mean, you know, like being free. And he said that when they got off, so from the bus, and they were supposed to go to the governor's place, and where apparently she was, there was an order there that she was to be shot on sight because this is a suicide bomber, with little Ahmed, who had made to join her, and that she would be reunited to her daughter. But when she got off, she heard the call for the prayer, the adhan. I think it was the Zohar prayer that she heard. And instead of going to the left, she went to the masjid where the call for prayer was. And by the time she got there, she just then refused to move, and then this whole thing happened. But she just said, oh my God, I have never heard that. And I think that is what saved her life, you know, just say Allah rakhe usse kaun jakhe. So it's a saying in Urdu, I'm sorry, that, you know, who Allah keeps, no one can harm. And she was meant to die that day, but she didn't. Just as 4 years ago, when Trump was leaving office, we had gotten our petition to his desk, but then the famous, infamous Capitol Hill happened, and it didn't happen. Qadar Allah, it wasn't meant to, it didn't happen. And we are right now standing here, as I'm standing here. We know that President Biden has probably now outdid all the previous presidents in his commuting sentences and pardoning, and he's done a lot of good. I mean, look at the 11 people in Guantanamo like 3 years ago. They were sure that they're going to die there. There was no hope, no light, and mashallah, they're now in Oman. And look at all those people, 37 out of 40 people who were on death row are not looking at death right facing them in the next 3 days, right? So, and then look at Syria. How many people thought before this coup happened that it's going to happen in a flash of an eye? So when Allah's qadr comes, it comes. I mean, I'm standing here and, you know, Clive goes and says that I did this or that. I mean, how did I get Ahmed when it was meant to be? How did I get Maryam? I mean, with Maryam, it was like they said clearly that I will not get her. There's no way. She's better off where she is. Here she is with me in her final year of medicine, mashallah. So, qadar Allah, when Allah wills it, I mean, the person that I had talked to said, you can change my name if that's ever going to be possible. So, but, I mean, both the kids, they said, they're American citizens. So what I was told by them was that they're American citizens and they will go into foster care they will be released to the State Department. There's no way that a Pakistani person can have the Americans. But qadar Allah. They're with me. Ahmed is now a medical doctor, and Mariam is studying to be one. Despite all the trauma they've gone through, despite everything and the major adjustments they had to go through, they have developed into wonderful human beings. They are, she's in the middle of finals, and she was crying when I left her. And when I said, you have to be strong, and you just focus on your studies, and I'll focus on your mother. And she was like, how can I do both? And then she holds my hand and says, make sure you come back with her. And I didn't know what to say then, but I said, let's pray. And Ahmed calls me last night. And says, do you know, every wazifa there is, we have been sitting, my own kids and all our volunteers have been sitting this whole week at our place. They've barely slept. I mean, how can I complain for anything when I have people like you and people like those and people like Clive and Maria and Brother Maury sitting right there. And Sheikh Asif, who has raised this to another level and who has always attended all the protests and has always he came to our home, he gave support and home to Aafia's children. And Sister Fatiha here, I mean, she is the most forgiving, the most wonderful person that I know. And Sister Zaina, that Clive talked about, I mean, she's just this morning, while Clive was gone to visit Aafia, and on my sleepless things and anxiety and all of that, I was just she was on the phone with me for over an hour, and we were just crying. And so, it makes me think of that, if this whole ordeal had not happened, I would not have ever known any of these great people. And, these are great people. These are the people who have actually given hope to those who thought there was no hope in this world. I would wake up in the morning and I would say, the world is still there. Where, Allah, where are those people you say for which the world will remain, who will be the ones who keep calling unto you? And look at the petition. We have more than 1.5 million signatures, and they're still coming. MashaAllah. And and not just that. My Instagram reach, thanks to all of you, has gone up to 22.4 million. And I didn't know that. People, these big influencers were texting me that can I collab with them. Honestly, I didn't even know, and I don't know what a collab is. And I'm like, why are these people asking me for this? I'm the one who's always asking them to please do something so Aafia's word can go out. And then there's one person sitting right here who is part of that team. And they're all in different time zones. And I text at the weirdest hours, but someone in that team is always there. They're the ones who have who get the credit for all of that. But they're the ones who have been heard. So if this happens or this doesn't happen, I think Aafia is the luckiest person on earth. I think I am the luckiest person, the most blessed person that I would say and see. I think that's me. With all of you and all these great people by my side, I can't complain. I think we have achieved more than any single person could have. And I am forever grateful for that. So if I break into tears, it's not because I have lost hope. I mean, there is this surah in Surah Talaq, and there is this ayat. I don't want to read it wrong. I am not like Aafia, who is an encyclopedia of the Quran, and that I was a medical doctor and a bookworm, and unfortunately, I mean, I wasn't one that would come to the masjids and that at that time, and or even to the protests, and I would also even tell Aafia that, what's the point? These are useless. And Aafia is the one who would drag me and who would say, it's these protests and these things, it's the number of heads that are there, it's the number of people. And if it's for a cause, it doesn't matter if it makes a difference or not. We do what we can do, and Allah does the rest. This was Aafia. And when so many of you and millions around the world do that, it's not because of me. It's because of who Aafia was. It's because of what Aafia used to do. She would see someone in trouble. She'd see 5 people with play cards. She would pick one up and say, you've been wronged in some way? I'm with you. And I would say, what's that? She said, up there. My head will be amongst one of those who has helped someone who needed help. And the more there are, the better it is. So, what gives me hope and what I want to share with you is one that I've been, there is always the story of Jonas, which I had actually Clive give to Aafia. I wrote it down. There's Hazrat Yunus alayhi salam and the story of the whale. I think everyone knows that. And I was like, who is helping me and who isn't, and how my own government, back doubled and U-turned and didn't give the last-minute support that it should have. And it made me think of that. And I was like, who was there with Hazrat Yunus? There's a couplet that my father used to always say, Abhi se kyun harasa hai? I don't know how many people here know Urdu. I hope majority do. Right? So, okay, great. So, Abhi se kyun harasa hai? Abhi se kyun harasa hai? Tala tumhaaye darya se? Abhi to na khuda ke baad imdade khuda hogi. So it's after the na khuda that it's after the worldly gods, after our worldly struggles and what we've strived for has ended. Like we have managed to get the petition on the radar. There's nothing more we can do. It is at that time when the help of Allah comes. Abhi to na khuda ke baad imdade khuda hogi. That gave me support and that gave me hope. And then La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu minaz zalimin. That is what got Hazrat Yunus alayhi salam out of the whale. There was no human there to pull him out. There was no one there. There was absolutely no one. It was him and his Allah, just like Aafia. Hey, we keep reciting that till we have hope. Aafia is not dead. For some reason, Allah has kept her alive. If I were to spend, I was just left there for about an hour or 45 minutes, and I was already going mad. You could recite a lot of Quranic ayats and that, and in the end, after like 20 minutes, I was counting all the cracks on the floor, like some crazy person. And that was just like, it's such a horrible place, and how Allah has kept her there, and how she even manages to talk to anybody. But the most important thing that gave me, and which I want to share with you, was Surah Talaq. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلَ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلَ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَالِغُ أَمْرِهِ قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدْرًا. So the thing is, when we rely on our Allah, then He is ours. And inshallah, and he is the one who takes things to their ultimate end. Balighu amri, takes them to the completion. But then he has already decreed everything. The qadr Allah, the qadr of Allah, the greatest. Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. So, I was like, why am I even thinking about what's going to happen? Who am I asking for mercy? Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most merciful, the most gracious, the most beneficent. And inshallah, he will not forsake us. Our prayers are what will take us ahead. We still have hope for this, but if Allah's qadr is not for this, it is for something else. It is to make it, as our Imam Sheikh Asif reminded me, and I want you to remind everyone else what you just reminded me with about Surah Yusuf.
Okay, Jazakumullah khairan. They were just having dinner at my house, and I was telling them the story of Joseph. And I was saying that one of my favorite ayah in Surah Yusuf, in the chapter of Joseph, is actually where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses one of his attributes. Inna Rabbi latiful lima yasha. Latif is one of the attributes of Allah, one of the names of Allah. And Latif literally means subtle. Allah does things in a subtle way. The brothers were thinking, we are kidnapping the brothers, we are selling him in different country. The minister's wife thought, I am actually doing oppression on Joseph. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was preparing road for him to become king. So we are doing our effort to bring Sister Aafia, Dr. Aafia back so that she can be reunited. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is latif. He's subtle how he does things. We cannot even imagine how he does things. A time will come for Yusuf alayhi salam when he want to come out. He would request someone to make a request, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time have not planned for him to come out. Later on, when it's perfect time, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made roads for him to come out because he's latif, he's subtle. So I found a very good parallel, and I hope inshallah that Dr. Aafia can come out and again be reunited with family, inshallah.
Inshallah ta'ala al-Aziz. The only thing and why my heart is so heavy is, as Clive had pointed out, it's just that for me, it's not about, I think we have succeeded. I mean, the result is up to Allah, but we have done our part. You have all done your part, and you will continue to do so, and that's the promise I want from all of you. But it's seeing Aafia like that, over there, in that prison, and then leaving her. Last time when I left her, it was very painful. She was in tears and she was constantly reciting the very last part of ayat number 75 of Surah Nisa, the dua that Allah Ta'ala, it's ayat number 75 and it's the last part because she told me that's what it is. She was continuously reciting it out loudly as she left, and that was, oh Allah, will you send someone that will free us from these oppressors who make our lives so miserable? Brother, can you just...
Okay, so the translation of this ayah is, وما لكم لا تقاتلون في سبيل الله والمستضعفين من الرجال والنساء والولدان. So the dua in this ayah is, O my Rabb, O my Lord, rescue us from this town whose people are oppressors and zalim. By your grace, give us a protector and give us a helper.
That's what she was reciting and in tears. And I said, Sister, I'm not going to come back until it is to take you out of that prison. And that's what I said to her. And I'm going to see her again tomorrow. Obviously, these guys raised her hopes too. But I may not be walking out with her tomorrow. And that's what I feel guilty about. That's what's hurting me, and that's what's painful for me. And I want you all to also pray that I don't break out. I don't start. I know that, she's the one who's going to be giving me comfort rather than the other way around. She is just who she is. She is this great person. But I can't leave her in there again and come out. It's just the thought of it is killing me. How can I do that? And yet I'm going to do it. Because obviously I can't come all the way here and not see her. But that is the thing, and we still have hope, and I would want you all to be reciting the Ayat-e-Karima, La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu minaz zalimin. And let us be amongst those who will get her out, inshallah. And just lastly, I just want to introduce the next person who you will be hearing, and that is Brother Mori Salah Khan. He is one of those people who, from the day he heard about Aafia, I've been in this, it's been over 20 years, 2 decades. So people come and people go. And people tell me you're fighting a lost battle, this. But there is just few people that you could count on your fingers who, once they joined, did not leave. Amongst these were Altaf Shakur of the Pasman Democratic Party and Brother Mori Salah Khan. May Allah bless him with peace, happiness, and prosperity. The interesting thing about Brother Mori, that he is the one who actually taught me the meaning of tawakkul. And I'm forever grateful for that. And I was just looking at the... Brother Mori, did you know what your name means in Mori in Arabic? You know what it means? It means my light, my illumination. And you know what Salah Khan means? If you make it Salam Khan, it's a combination of Salak, meaning peace or blessing, and Khan, which is a title of respect. And that is how I see you, and that is how I see our next speaker, who is Brother Mori Salah Khan, who was there in the trial. During the trial, he is the first-hand witness of that kangaroo trial. So please welcome Brother Mori Salah Khan.
Inshallah, before we welcome him, we're going to do practicing another chanting. Free. Oh, come on, guys. We can do better. We need to wake up the neighbor beside us. All right. Free. 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 Takbir.
One last thing. I will be inside FMC Carswell with Aafia. When you guys will be outside, please make sure I do hear you so Aafia can hear you too. So you definitely will have to be louder than this. Right? So am I looking forward to seeing you all there? Hearing you all there, because I doubt they'll let me see you. Okay.
Thank you, sister. Brother Yaqub, can you look into my bag and bring me that graphic art piece that was done by Christopher Town? I want to show that to the audience. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Brothers and sisters, I'm going to be brief, inshallah ta'ala, so we can get, thank you, brother, so we can get, right into the Q&A, and you can raise the questions that you need to raise of the type of lawyer. let me rephrase that. The lawyer that I wish had been involved in this case from the very beginning. And also any questions you might have of our sister Fowzia, who has indeed been a champion. Over the years, I've been involved in so many of these cases, You know, one of the things that I've noticed over and over and over and over again is the tendency for the loved ones of political prisoners. And I've been involved in many political prisoner cases all over the country, you know, especially post 9/11, even before 9/11, but especially post 9/11. And one of the things that I've always noted was that in the vast majority of cases, when this kind of assault takes place on a family, an unjustified assault on the family, it's not just on that one individual or that group of individuals, it's on families, it's on communities. And there's often this tendency to want to, you know, climb into a hole, to disappear, hoping that, you know, it'll pass. And it's very seldom that you have families, individuals within families that are willing to fight back, something that we encourage. And so, like Clive, I do applaud our sister Fowzia as well for being I call her the leader of the international Free Aafia movement. Alhamdulillah. But as an African American, I want to begin with the words of one of the great thinkers and writers and poets of one of the movements in this country known as the Harlem Renaissance. Langston Hughes had this very thought-provoking poetic verse concerning Lady Liberty that sits in New York Harbor. You know, the Statue of Liberty, given as a gift to America from France, the blindfolded woman holding the scales of justice. Well, Langston Hughes had an interesting take on Lady Liberty. He said that justice is a blind goddess, is a thing to which we blacks are wise. Her bandage hides two festering sores, which once, perhaps, were eyes. Langston Hughes, Justice. That's the title of that poem, Justice. Now, I want to quickly note the following. As my sister Fowzia pointed out, I have been involved in this case since 2009. The way I became involved in the case, I was the guest khatib for Jummah at one of the largest centers in Maryland, the Islamic Society of Baltimore. We just had a program there, what was it, 2 nights ago? And after the Jummah, you know, as usual, they would allow me to have a human rights table in the lobby. As the people, brothers and sisters, formed around the table looking at what we had, the books, the pamphlets, back then the CDs, there was a sister that came up to me and said, you know, she complimented me on the presentation, and then she said, "Do you know about the case of Aafia Siddiqui?" And I said, "Well, I have heard the name." I said, "But I don't know much." She said, "Would you like to know more?" I said, "Sure." That it was either later that night or the next evening, I met with her and her mother and father. It turns out that this was the sister-in-law of Brother Muhammad Siddiqui. It was a sister-in-law, a newly minted doctor. I met with her and her mother and father, and we spent about an hour together, and they walked me through the case. And then after that, I do what we always do before we become involved in a case. We do our homework. We investigate to make sure that we come down on the right side of the issues, on the fact side of the issue. You know, Allah says in the Quran, "Stand firmly for justice as witnesses to Allah, even if it be against yourselves, your parents or your kin, or whether it be against rich or poor, for Allah can best protect both." So we do our homework, we do our research. And the more research I did on Aafia Siddiqui, the more I realized this was a horrific case. This was a horrific injustice. And this was in 2009. I've been involved ever since. When the trial unfolded in 2010, I was there. I met Muhammad in the court. Muhammad, and I met Andy, his very close friend at the time, who was passed on. May Allah be pleased with him. He was a stalwart supporter of Aafia and her family. We met in the courtroom, and I was there for preliminary hearings. When the trial started, I was there. I witnessed the entire trial. I witnessed the lies that were evident, that were overlooked. It was incredible. SubhanAllah, brothers and sisters, let me tell you something. This was the first and the only case where when that jury came back after what was supposed to be a fair trial, a fair proceeding, it was far from it. It was the first case that brought me to tears. The first time and the only time when a Muslim defendant or any defendant who was clearly innocent was found guilty, it brought me to tears. It was tears of pain and tears of anger. So, with that being said, we made a commitment, and we've stood by that commitment all these years. And it hasn't been easy. We've been in centers like this, or I should say we've approached centers like this, large centers in different parts of the country, including right here where Aafia is being held, and trying to have access like we have tonight. It was like pulling teeth without Novocaine. SubhanAllah, very, very sad and very shameful. And it's been a struggle. I can imagine how it's been for our sister Zina and the friends of Aafia in the UK. Most of them are sisters. It's been difficult for me as a male. I can imagine how it's been for them as females. But this is what is required. You've got to be willing to struggle and sacrifice in order for justice to be done. Let me also say this. I asked my brother to bring up this. It's an example of what can be done. This was done a few years ago. A few years ago, I addressed a college in Maryland. It was either Coppin State University or that, I forgot the other name, the name of the other college, but the Maryland College. But anyway, I addressed the college, and there was this young man, I'll never forget him, a young Caucasian brother. Looked like he was about 21, 22 years old, I think about to graduate soon. And he was so moved by the presentation that he just wanted to do something. What can I do? So he contacted me maybe a day or two later, and he said that, I'd like to do something special. He said, I'm an artist, and I'd like to do something special for Aafia. Can I interview you again and just walk through all the facts again? His name was Christopher Town, and he ended up producing this graphic art, like comic book, and it's just amazing, absolutely amazing. It's an example of what can be. He tells the story of Aafia in graphic art. This was done a few years back. An example of what you can do. If a non-Muslim young man can do this after hearing about Aafia just for the first time, what can we do? There's a sister of ours in Maryland. Her name is Aafia Siddiqui. She's a runner. She's a marathoner. She's been doing it for many years. I wish I was in the shape that Aafia is in. And you know what she does? She raises issues that she runs for to bring attention to as causes. And one of her most frequent issues that she raises, the flag that she raises, is Aafia Siddiqui. She's been doing it for years. So there are very creative ways that we can do things that can make a difference. The last thing I want to say is this. Brothers and sisters, the late Ramsey Clark, who died at the age of 93, and this is very important. If you don't take anything else to heart tonight of what your brother Salah Khan has to say, let this be something that you take to heart. Ramsey Clark was the son, first of all, he's a son of Texas. He was born and raised in Texas. Ramsey Clark was one of the most consequential attorney generals, certainly in modern U.S. history, if not in all of U.S. history. One of the most consequential. You know, we've heard about what Jimmy Carter did after he left the Oval Office, the extraordinary, praiseworthy career that he had as a philanthropist, doing a lot of good work on so many fronts. Well, that was Ramsey Clark even before Jimmy Carter. And Ramsey Clark, when he left the government, as the U.S. Attorney General, the highest law enforcement office in the land, he devoted himself to human rights work. He was a mentor of mine. And again, he died at the age of 93. He started an organization based in New York, the International Justice Network, and the International Action Center. And he had monitors in the trial during the entire trial. One of them was Sarah Flounders. And, you know, after the trial ended, that's when he and I really connected. And he took me under his wing. I had many visits to his home in Lower Manhattan. We had many discussions. I was able to facilitate him, introducing him to the Aafia's family, and him traveling to Pakistan to speak to government officials and to encourage them to do more to get the daughter of the nation back. And then when he returned on that trip, we were in Texas for a rally for Aafia. He joined us. And it was here in Texas that he said something that stuck deeply with me. He said, the case of Aafia Siddiqui is the worst case of individual injustice I have ever witnessed. This is what Ramsey Clark said. The son of a U.S. Supreme Court justice, his father stepped down from the bench, from the U.S. Supreme Court, when his son took the oath of office for the attorney generalship because he didn't want there to be an appearance of impropriety. I say all this to say this, brothers and sisters. For far too long, far too many of us, especially our leaders, our shuyukh, our organizations, have been afraid to stand up and push back for Aafia Siddiqui. Have been afraid to stand up and push back for so many of our other political prisoners. The fear has got to stop. If Aafia Siddiqui isn't released, if she isn't released, the question becomes, what are we going to do next? Are we gonna, those of us who have been in shells and in black holes, and are we gonna just go back into them and pretend as if, you know, we never we're part of an audience like this tonight? Or are we going to use the injustice of this issue continuing as it is continuing to say enough is enough? Ya ayyuhalladina amanu in tansurullaha yansurkum wa yusabir aqdamakum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us to respond to the challenge the way that we must. I'll end with this last word. I often say to audiences large and small, whether they're predominantly Muslim audiences or predominantly non-Muslim audiences, don't wait for something like this to happen to you or to someone that you love before you become concerned. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah khair, everyone. We're gonna do another chant, inshallah. See if you are still awake or not. Free. 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 Takbir. So right now, inshallah, I want you to scan the QR code. We will be taking, inshallah, question and answer. And Clive, Brother Maury, and Dr. Fowzia, inshallah, they will be answering. Do we have anyone would like to ask a question? We have somebody's over there. Please stand up. We're going to take you one and then you two. But by the time, inshallah, you guys are scanning and writing your question. Please. Do we have mic for him? On the way, inshallah. Some traffic.
So I just have one question for Clive. I know there was a wrongful conviction, but was there any follow-up to the trial? You know, I do believe in the justice system of America. Yes, the lower courts are corrupt, but there are appellate courts, there are Supreme Courts. Was there any follow-up on the trial? That's one thing. And then the second thing, I just have a comment. You know, the Muslim community in USA was really traumatized by the genocide that happened under President Biden's leadership. So I just don't want any, good words for President Biden. Anyway, thank you. Thanks.
On your first one, certainly if you believe in the American justice system, you're utterly deluded, sir. I'm sorry. There are good things. There are good things about the American system. I teach a course about how it's better than the British system, at least. And that's that I, as a lawyer, for example, have immense power because of the US Constitution, which is fabulous. But there are aspects of the American system that are just ridiculous. Herrera versus Collins is the Supreme Court case that says that when you're in federal habeas challenging your conviction, the fact that you didn't do the crime is not a reason to set you free. Now that's just idiotic, and that's the law of this country. And I represented a chap called Krishna Maharaj, who was on death row, British guy, and he spent 38 years in prison, despite the fact that I got 6 Medellin cartel people to say they did the crime. So the American system is not good for reaching facts because the system wants you to believe in the system, not in justice for individuals. Now, with Aafia, she had a direct appeal, which was on legal issues, but she'd had a rubbish trial. If you have a bad trial, you're twice screwed over. Because if you have a decent lawyer at trial, you have a much better chance of winning, and you preserve all the issues of unfairness for appeal. So then you have a real chance. If you have a bad lawyer at trial, you have a bad trial, and then the lawyer's not objected to anything and not raised any issues, so you don't get a proper appeal either. The whole system is insane. So she had that first appeal, didn't go anywhere, and then she had a second at what's called the 2255, a habeas challenge, which she withdrew because her lawyers accepted her decision that she didn't want to go forward with it. And this is some poor woman who's just been tortured for 5 years and then put in FMC Carswell and tortured some more to the point where she doesn't believe in hardly anything except her Lord. And so she withdrew it. So that was the end of that for her. And lawyer, you can't do that as a lawyer. That is madness. I've been there many, many times. So she's never had any justice. Now, we're going to get it for her, but honestly, it takes a while. American courts take a long time. So, I'd rather we got her out on Monday instead of in 2 years' time. Yeah, go ahead.
I know that when Biden came here, we have Muslims, specifically Pakistani doctors that are connected to the Biden administration. If you know any one of them, please connect him with the Clive. I know you guys, some of you are from this community. I know we can do it, inshallah. You guys fundraise for him closer 10 minutes from here. So inshallah, if you have connection to anyone connected to the White House, to Biden administration, please have him talk to Clive.
Don't waste your time having him talk to me. Just call the White House. No, if there's anyone who has connections, tell them just to call the White House and do it now. Okay. Okay. The other, would you want to do these questions? Well, how do you want to do it? We'll do one at a time. So one in person. I'll just do one here. If we know that the ISI and Pakistan military is involved, then what are we doing to bring them to justice? And then am I working for Imran Khan? Of course I am. Look, I don't actually believe in persecuting the people who did this to her, because that's going to make it much harder for us to get her out. You know, the South Africans, when they'd suffered through all the racism of apartheid, had a truth and justice system where if you told the truth, truth and reconciliation, where you told the truth, we didn't put you in prison in revenge. It's a much more effective system. I'm not interested in putting everyone who did this in prison. I want two things. I want, number one, Aafia out of prison and in a hospital where she needs to be. And number two, I want the military out of Pakistan politics. Those are the only two things I care. And obviously I want Imran Khan out. We'll work on that too. Yeah, we're going to swap and have someone from over here too.
Hi, I wanted to ask, so obviously, you know, we want to support the cause and support Dr. Aafia, but as you mentioned, our justice system is pretty messed up in a lot of different ways, and also we don't want CIA or FBI to just show up to our doors. So how do we support her and at the same time be smart about it and, you know, do it smartly, basically?
Look, I really want the CIA to show up at my door. I want to talk to them. The biggest problem with those people is they have no idea about the reality. I met with the British intelligence people and I said, look, I just want to come and tell you, you don't have to talk to me. I don't care if you talk to me. I just want to tell you the facts of life because you people don't know what's going on here. Now, my current thing, you don't have to do this, but my job is to threaten these people because I am what's called an OPWM, right? That's an old privileged white male. I can get away with that stuff. And if I don't, you can come and get me out of jail, and I don't care. So I'm telling the CIA, who are doubtless going to hear what we're saying here tonight, that's fine, I hope they do, that if they don't help get her out, I'm going to expose what they've done, and I'm coming after them. And, you know, that's fine. This is fun. I love this. This is my sport. After cricket, this is my second favorite sport. So I don't mind that. You don't have to worry. You don't have to do that stuff. But don't worry about the CIA coming to your door. They're not coming. If they do, please give me a call, put them on the phone with me, and I'll talk to them. I'd love to. That'd be great. Don't worry about it. You poor chap have been waiting.
Yes, back in 1999, Dr. Wen-Ho Lee was illegally prosecuted. He was a researcher at Los Alamos Laboratories, and Chinese community just moved in droves against his illegal detention. They were demonstrating against colleges, institutions. They were refusing to sign up with Justice Department for employment even. So it caused actually Janet Reno and Louis Freeh to eventually drop all charges against him. They said he was just exchanging scientific information with the Chinese. He was not prosecuted, and he was, because they were afraid sensitive information will be released. So with this case, we have sensitive information. The court was given Imran Shaukat's recorded conversation. The arresting officer, who became superintendent of police for Sindh province later, he was here in Dallas. And so how are we?
But it's always the same game, right? We've done this in Guantanamo 1,000 times. When you criticize the legal system plays a role, but it's a very small role. I brought the very first case against Guantanamo, Rasul versus Bush, and we needed to win that to get into Guantanamo Bay. But since we got into Guantanamo Bay, there have been 765 people released. The courts ordered the release of 2 out of 765. One of them was one of my clients, but the 763 people got out through the court of public opinion, which was where we went in there, we got the truth out, and then we either threatened to publish it or did publish it, whereupon they set people free. And that is one of the great wonders of this system. For all its failings, the American system, if you have people doing their job, we can get the job done. And some of you are probably in the media. We need you to help. We're doing a two-part documentary for Al Jazeera. Up till Monday, we haven't been really interested in stirring up the sort of media trouble that we're now going to have to do if they don't do the right thing. But we need your help to do that. Now, I'll take one of the questions here. Oh, what can you do to help monetarily? Well, look, we always need funds. I do it for free because my mum told me to. I'm an old privileged white male, and if I don't do that, she'll strike me dead from heaven. But we do need to raise funds to do all of the work that needs to be done, and it should really be done through, Fowzia, through the Aafia thing, right?
The Muslim givings? Yeah. Tell them how to do that. Oh, that's not something I can do right now. Okay, so we have one that's in the UK for, which is the Muslim givings account, and I'll have, I think, brother, do you have that link so we can put it up, or Yaqub? Yeah, there's the Aafia Foundation with Brother Mori here in the US that's advocating for that, and the one in the UK will go for her legal. It's justice for it's muslimgivings.com, where there's a whole appeal for donation, and that's the account, and the account is Justice for Aafia Coalition. So it's a coalition for all of that, and that is from where we send, kind of do all the expenses for all of this that's happening, and all the trips that have happened, and all of that. So we're, at this point, we put everything, we emptied the accounts. And we weren't raising any funds right now because we were hoping we'll get her out. So if not, Ramadan is coming. So we need you, the Aafia Foundation and both the Muslim givings, they need you. I will get you the link in a minute.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Brothers and sisters, I think the target is $70,000-$80,000 for the entire, because last time when I posted it was around $70,000-$80,000, right, Dr. Fowzia? Then they might need more, right? Yeah. So ideally 70,000-80,000, but if this doesn't happen, then they have to come with different plans, and that might increase. Please, if you can donate generously, inshallah. I don't need to say more after this, but please donate generously, inshallah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Or?
Yes, right here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My question to you that you already put the petition in front of the Joe Biden, who is a Zionist, son of a gun. So, question is that if he don't, I hope that he approve it, and she come out. If he don't, which I doubt it, by the way. So if he don't, then he already know the next president who's coming in. So what's your plan for him to be aware of that?
Look, it's not a big deal, right? Every death penalty trial I've ever done, you're faced with 12 jurors, all of who swear up and down they're in favor of executing people. You can't get on an American capital jury unless you promise you will execute someone. So it's always 12 people with whom I fundamentally disagree. And all you got to do is look for the good in them, and there's always something there. And Americans are great. You people in America are very simple. I love it. The morality of this country is much simpler than it is in a place like Britain. And so you just got to work out what it is. And with Christians, it's always the same thing. It's Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. If you don't show mercy, you go to hell. If you do what I ask, which is show mercy, you go to heaven. It's just that simple. And there's always a way to get through to people. Donald Trump is much simpler than Biden, because we all know Donald Trump. And I think we can get to him. And I'm not worried about that. And the jury is always someone you just got to work out the language they speak and what they understand, and then talk to them in that language. That's all it is. Fine. I always wonder about ACLU lawyers who think we shouldn't mix religion with politics. Of course we should. Religion is what matters most to most people here. So why not talk about it? There's no problem with that. you want another one? Okay. Oh, where can we get the graphic produced by you? Where can you get the graphic?
I just PDF'd it.
Oh,
I
to
sent
me?
you a PDF.
Okay, well, I think this graphic is fabulous, and it's an inspiration to you lot, right? We could update it a little bit with some of the new information, but this little comic book is fabulous. So who's an artist here? Come on, one of you is an artist. Put your hand up. Oh, yes, come on. Well, come up secretly afterwards and tell us. All right. Yes.
One comment and quick question. So I've been sent some videos from a vlogger in Pakistan. He was actually spewing hate against Sister Aafia Siddiqui, despite her being the victim. So I'm pretty sure he's being funded by the military in Pakistan. So my question is, how can are we doing anything to kind of push the military to do something because it's a military government right now, to do something for Sister Aafia? And if there's a follow-up question is, can we as Pakistani Americans do anything to kind of push them in that direction?
You know, bullies only understand bullying, right? So we have an agreement with the Pakistan government that the clemency petition that I wrote up, which is 76,600 words, which has an awful lot of the truth of what happened, including Mr. Shaukat, that we won't expose all of the new stuff. I've got another ISI agent who's given me a sworn affidavit about what they really did. I've got a US intelligence agent who's told us about it. I got a whole, I got Hamid Karzai, the former president of Afghanistan, was the person who helped Fowzia get Mariam back, and he's a witness in this case. And if they want to have a hearing about that, bring it on. I mean, I can't wait to do this stuff, right? So I told them, we won't publish all the really bad stuff if you can just get Aafia out by the 20th of January. But if they don't, then the gloves are off, and then we go after them. And that's what we told the military, because the military only understands, veiled threats, basically. So what you can do is you can call everyone in Pakistan and tell them the facts of life, right? That either they help us or we're going to have a public 3-week-long evidentiary hearing in New York where we expose all their dirty laundry. And tell them, I'm really looking forward to it. So they'll ruin my day. If they do the right thing by Aafia, they'll make me very sad that I don't get to expose all their criminality. But on the other hand, it would be a win, so that's all right. Okay. Who's allowed to see her in prison? Family and legal counsel only. No, there are other people. You can get on a visitation list, but it's not easy. And they don't, FMC Carswell is rotten, that they don't even let me or Fowzia see Aafia face-to-face without a screen. Guantanamo Bay, I go see my clients, we sit there across a table, there's nothing in the way. My clients actually cook me lunch sometimes and bring it to the table. I'm allowed to take anything I want in there. Why not? FMC Carswell, the men's section of the prison, you have a contact visit with the prisoner, you can give them a hug, you can shake their hands, you can do whatever you like. Which obviously makes sense because they search me on the way in. It's not like I'm taking anything illegal in. The women's section of FMC Carswell, you can't do that. You have a plastic screen, you have a terrible telephone that doesn't really work. Aafia's half deaf because of how she was beaten. It's a horrible system. But for you, if you're visiting her as a friend and you get on her list, it's even worse. You have to do it on video. So it's not a great system, and, it's difficult for her too, because she has to go through some bad stuff to go to a visit. So you can do it, but it's actually, I think, easier, much simpler to just contact her through me, and we can just send in whatever you want to say. But Fowzia can go, and, she will.
Assalamu alaikum. I was wondering, because I read a book, it was talking about how people, they're not wrong or stupid, they just have a different point of view. So I'm wondering why would someone believe that Dr. Aafia is guilty, and how would you debunk their claim?
No, you are totally right. You haven't read my book on the subject, which would tell you, yes, they do believe different things, and they believe them because we have everyone. And don't take the microphone. I've got some questions to ask this young man. Sorry, will you take the mic back to him? That we have everyone in the wrong job. Do you want to be a police officer?
No.
Why not?
It just seems a little too violent. My mom wouldn't like it.
And you don't want to put people in prison?
No.
See, that's why you'd be a good police officer, because you care. The people who choose to be police officers, I'm sorry if there's a bunch here, but by and large, I've sued lots of cops. I got all your psychological records. The majority of people who become cops have what's called the authoritarian personality, which means they believe in the system. Doesn't mean they're not nice people. There are lots of nice people. But they believe the system works because they have to. Because otherwise they'd go to work every day saying, oh, how many innocent people shall I put in prison today? So the people in that job believe the stuff that they learn. That makes them 10 times more dangerous. Because if someone was corrupt and just making stuff up because they were corrupt, we can expose that. But if they believe this nonsense, would you be a CIA agent? Would you?
No.
No, because you're not a paranoid, delusional nitwit. And the people who do that believe all this conspiracy nonsense, right? And they genuinely believe when they grab someone for a bounty, when they torture them, they're not torturing them because they think they're innocent. They're torturing them because they think they haven't confessed yet to the truth. And so then when they do confess to the truth, they put them in Guantanamo, and then there's no way to defend them, right? If I say that you're 30 years old and you were in Saudi Arabia in 2011 and you're in Guantanamo, how do you prove I'm wrong? You can't, right? Not until you finally get a lawyer in there. I had a client who was 14 under those circumstances, and these mad Americans thought he was 26 and an Al-Qaeda financier. And I asked one of them, how are we going to prove how old he is? And they start talking about his teeth. And I said, why don't we just ask the Saudis to give us a birth certificate? And they hadn't done that in 5 years. These people really are quite annoying. So our job is just to prove the truth and find someone who cares about the truth. I don't really care if we change their mind. I care if we get Aafia out.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, we're going on a long time. I'm sorry to do this, but one last question.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Clive and Mori, for coming and volunteering. Can you hear me?
Speak right.
So,
straight into it.
Thank you for your volunteer and time, you and Mori and everyone else. But this is why we are living in this world. We definitely have some good people in this world. Otherwise, the world will not be like that. World cannot be functioned without some good people. So thank you for that. Now, before I go to that related issue on Aafia, but I just want to let you know that war on terror destabilized every Islamic country. And recently, if you are keeping the news up, recently it happened in Bangladesh. Is then worse? Is Aafia going through? Similar things going through in Bangladesh. About more than 10 years, people were tortured. They were in prison cell. They were disappeared. They were killed by the security. Every Islamic country gone through the same thing. Now, going back to the related Aafia, I'm still don't understand. She is not part of 9/11. She is not part of war on terror. Why we had so difficulty to get her out, until recently, you give me the story. Every time I say that something is weird. It's not, and I'm not completely uncomprehending.
Let me tell you what the deal is. Your problem when you've been through the American legal system is that they hold that up as the fig leaf that justifies what happens to you. I have a project where I'm representing 206 dead people. They're people who have been executed in this country who I think were innocent. And that's 206 out of 1,602. So 13% of the people we've executed in this country, I think, were innocent, and we're going to prove it, right? But the reason they got killed is they went through the American legal system, which is terrible at figuring out who did something. You know, by and large, the people I went to law school with at Columbia Law School all went down to work for corporate law firms and do useless stuff with money and corporations. And the people who do death penalty trials and other trials like that don't get paid anything and are pretty hopeless. And so therefore people get really bad representation. And Aafia got really bad representation. If she was in Guantanamo, we'd get her out tomorrow because they don't have the fig leaf of a legal trial. But once you're tried and convicted, it becomes very, very much more difficult. That's why what I did when I was doing death penalty trials all the time is I was doing the trial level. I don't want to do all those appeals because it's too much trouble to get people out. I want to stop them from going in the first place. And that's what we always have to do. But Aafia, unfortunately, we don't have the choice. She is where she is. So we got to deal with it as it is. And now that becomes a much more political issue than it is a legal issue. And so it means we've got to marshal the support of people, we've got to publicize it, we've got to have millions of people, and we've got to make it not worth their while keeping her. And that's your job.
I have one more question.
You can, inshallah, talk to him, come and talk to him, but we have to end. I'm going to
Just the email that he said that we can send the email to share the.
Yes, if you scan the QR code on the above, you're going to see the petition. You're going to see where you can send the letter for him. His email is there. All the information in the QR code if you scan it, inshallah. And we want to see you